So fellas, a conversation topic that has been coming up a lot lately in my live streams has been that of skill in first-person shooter games, and more specifically, Planetside 2. We all know that Planetside 2 is a pretty brutal game for new players to get into for a multitude of reasons, and the constant intermixing of players of all skill levels certainly contributes to that brutality. And one of the arguments that I've heard a lot lately is that quote-unquote high-skilled players who group together exclusively are damaging to the game and to the wider experience. But is it really fair to posit that the veteran players who are highly skilled are a problem by just existing? Is it a problem when they choose to play with other experienced players exclusively? As I said, all of these are things I've had thrown my way lately. So, g'day there once again viewers, your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today I want to use this opportunity to talk about the importance of skill curves in first-person shooters, specifically Planetside 2, but also the importance of healthy competition. So obviously, when we talk about skill in Planetside, there's a huge spectrum of arenas and areas of the game to consider. There are people who are gods in the infantry side of the game, and people who are great in the armor versus armor side of the game. There are people who are amazing in air dogfighting, and others who know how to best utilize the construction system. There's rooms for quote-unquote skill to grow in each of these areas, and in different forms. Some of these playstyles will have different ranges of skill, with higher skill ceilings and lower skill floors, and anywhere in between. Some players may also admire certain expressions of skill differently by comparison to others. And in a game like Planetside, where there are so many different ways to play the game that all interact with each other, you are of course going to experience some conflict among different points of view. We've all been there. For example, a player who is, say, playing air-to-ground might be relatively skilled in that field of the game, being able to perform, crazy maneuvers in the air, dodging AA fire, all the while being able to keep their crosshairs on target. There's, admittedly, looking at this from a completely unbiased perspective, some skill in being able to do that. However, if you were looking at it from a biased perspective, we've all been on the receiving end of that before, and more often than not, we just feel like reaching through the monitor and strangling the pilot who is on the other end of it. So there is an infinitesimally large amount of combinations to consider here. So in the name of narrowing the scope of the video, I want to focus on the world of infantry and the skill curve that exists there. When we start talking about skill discrepancies in combined arms gameplay and what skills should triumph in certain situations, we're of course going to run into some biases, balance issues, and a whole myriad of stuff that is going to require a 45-minute video and a supporting essay, even though I'm kind of going to do a supporting essay for this video. Anyway, the point is, to narrow the scope, we're going to focus on infantry. So the infantry game of Planetside, it's actually not that different from your other first-person shooter games out there, mechanically speaking. There's a 2x headshot multiplier, there's leg shots that deal less damage, weapons have recoil and spread mechanics that you need to manage, there's lots to think about, but nothing that's really too outlandish to a seasoned FPS player. So why does the Planetside skill curve in straight-up infantry gameplay always seem so steep? Well, among many things, it comes from the constant intermixing of your casual and die-hard player bases that happens as a result of the sandbox environment that Planetside brings about. Your players who are at the peak of their powers and the players who might take on a more casual approach to the game are pretty much always found in the exact same fight. It's worth noting that a player can be brand new and still have a good enough understanding of core FPS mechanics that they're able actually to get some work done in their first few hours of Planetside gameplay. Summit1G, when he came to the game, was a good example of this, after he got some initial help from the community members and from the developers for making sure he didn't get weapons locked. The point is, being a veteran or a new player doesn't always necessarily correlate to the skill level that you carry with you in-game. You can be a long-standing veteran who's been playing this game for 10 years, but still may carry a more casual outlook and therefore be a little less skilled by comparison to some of your compadres out there. And I want to make it clear that the term casual isn't inherently a bad term. It's just a term that describes one's ability, one's time allowance, or approach to playing the game. The term casual doesn't carry any real negative connotation within the context of this video, and I would like it if we could keep it that way within the comments section here as well. When I use the term casual here, I use it as a means to describe players who, say, aren't that interested in the game with as much of a competitive mindset, who are less set on finding the meta builds, who care less about their personal performance in light of just having fun, or who play maybe 1 or 2 hours a week. I think it's fair to say that if you take on board this approach, you're playing the game pretty casually, and there's nothing wrong with that. Casual gaming is something that I do for many other games out there. I mean, shit, I don't think there's a way to play, say, The Sims competitively by comparison. I think that most of us, regardless of how we do it, play games to wind down and blow some steam after a long day at work or school or whatever, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with doing that in a casual manner. But by the same token, there's nothing wrong with doing it in a competitive manner as well. There are players out there who blow that steam via a measure of their own performance, that being through testing themselves, their limits, breaking those limits over and over again. It's a genuine interest many have, myself included, and it results in players who become incredibly committed and dedicated to your game, and who also potentially act as conduits of knowledge from people to learn from. It gives you an experienced player base that can provide feedback to developers from a place of understanding and authority as well. Easily one of the most important aspects of having an experienced player base in gaming in today's day and age. Call these people meta slaves, call them sweats, call them whatever you want. Having a skill curve that gives players the capacity to reach these levels of skill, especially by comparison to the skill level of your more casual audience, is what keeps some veterans around. This is a truth found in any first-person shooter game out there that has a die-hard player base, and the reward of conquering the skill curve comes in many forms depending on the game. However, in a world where skill-based matchmaking and ranked placements help to diversify the challenge to match a player's level of skill, you then come across to a game like Planetside, a game where the persistence and freedom of the world we play in means that players of all skill levels and approaches to their gameplay intermix daily. The quote-unquote casual gamers and competitive Andes cross paths all the time. And I have to say, despite the laundry list of first-person shooter games that I've played in my time, Planetside is one of those games where you are most likely to see someone drop a accusation against a perfectly legitimate player because, well, they are just that much better than them. So much so that within the opponent's mindset, it is impossible for any one player to be that good just by nature of what they understand to be the limit of the game or the human ability. And that makes me sad because, well, by making that conclusion that, X player who just killed Y player is hacking, that player is by far limiting their ability to reach that level of gameplay that the enemy player just killed them with. It stops them getting any better before they've even started because they refuse to understand why that level of skill beat them. Skill and expressions of skill, even if you're on the receiving end of it, is something that needs to be appreciated. It should be something that is noted of and used to grow yourself as a player. It would be nice to see that mentality make more of a dominant return, because it's something worth remembering too that the highly skilled players that are in this community, in some way, shape or form, started at the bottom. No one started being the absolute laser beam that they are now. They probably started off sitting in huge overpops, staring at a spawn room shield, scrapping over their teammates for the occasional kill. The difference here is that those players identified a want to grow further and acted on it. And the game having the option for them to do that is probably what kept them around for a while in the first place. Everyone admittedly has their own skill ceiling that they can physically and mentally accomplish due to any number of factors. But I am willing to guarantee that that skill ceiling is beyond what you start at in any game you play. There is always room for growth. I am a true believer of that. The presence of a skill gap and the ability for players to improve and show a degree of mastery of mechanical skill, as well as an ability to identify items in the game that allow this mastery to be reached, is so damn important to have in your games, which is why I personally detest the term meta slaves. If the community, to any extent, has identified the most effective way to achieve a particular metric or outcome, that is just what happens in the pursuit of that mastery. It can come in any form of piece of gear or combination of gear in a game. In Planetside, it could be the heavy assault, the light assault, the combat medic, a certain assault rifle, a certain LMG, whatever. No matter whether or not you nerf what is meta in that given moment, a new meta will be established in search of that perfection. It's a byproduct of having a skill curve in your game and players who are willing to push that skill curve to the limit, and if you actively choose to work against the meta to avoid being a quote-unquote meta slave just because, then all power to you, but don't expect the game to work around your personal decisions on that sense. Moving against the flow for the sake of moving against the flow very rarely nets a positive result in the long term. It's like showing up to a job interview in tattered clothes without a resume. Sure, it's going against the grain, it might be fun, and you'll probably make an impression, to say the very least, but you sure as shit won't get the job. That's just how life and the competition that life itself breeds works. Competition in our work, social, hell, even competition at a retail level is what keeps society chugging along and is what keeps innovation strong. It's what challenges people to work towards new things and push themselves to become a better version of themselves. Now, obviously, in real life, there are people who are, say, born into situations where they may not be offered the same opportunities as others. But if we loop this back to the world of video games, and more specifically to Planetside, unless someone comes to the game with a physical or mental impairment that doesn't let them improve beyond a certain level, I'd say the skill curve in Planetside 2 is pretty fair and approachable out there, to be honest. I mean, the gear that you get out of the blocks in this game, especially in the weaponry department, is some of the best out there. The game, in the infantry department at least, gives you some of the best tools to work with. It's just about you improving your skill to go beyond that. And that's what keeps communities dedicated for the long haul. A skill curve that is approachable, but vast in range. As a closing point here today, I also want to talk about what happens when a group of highly skilled players, who are at the height of their power, seeking that mastery, if you will, start to group together and form your quote-unquote sweat fits within the community. You know, your recursions, if you will. I don't know what the other server equivalents are, but you get the gist. You get these groups of players who play together who all share a similar degree of skill that when combined together become an insanely powerful force that are capable of holding up against crazy odds. This, of course, can make the perceived skill gap and the challenge of conquering the resulting skill curve even more daunting to a casual player. I get that. And look, sometimes I'm not exactly all that keen either in having to drain enough sweat out of my body to nourish an entire impoverished country just to win a fight. There'll be times where I see recursion in a point hold and I just go fuck that and redeploy. But by the same token, this culmination of highly skilled players under one banner is as natural as the rotation of the sun. You give a highly skilled player a group of guys that are all subpar inability to click heads and tell them to watch a doorway, that player isn't going to be able to trust them as far as they can throw them. But put that same player in a room filled with people who think like they do, play like they do, share similar capabilities mechanically, and they're going to feel right at home. If you want to play Planetside for the objective of capturing bases, then you need to have a level of trust with your squad members that they will perform to your standard and you to theirs. So when a player seeks out other players who match their abilities, you get outfits like recursion. People seek out like-minded individuals to connect with. It's why your social media feeds, yes, YouTube included, are tailored particularly to you, and it's why you've spent the last few hours diving into a rabbit hole that is your YouTube recommended feed. Because there is a science to how we associate ourselves with the content we enjoy, the games we play, and the people we connect with. And it expands on how we associate ourselves in games. Getting good at something is all well and good and all, but when you can get good and then immediately fit in with another group of players or another group of people who are on equal skill level with you, and then you can use your combined knowledge to achieve greater results, that's kind of what you want to see. But strangely enough, in response to that within the Planetside community, I hear stuff like, these players should spread themselves out to make things fairer, or these players grouping up like this breaks the fairness of the game, which to me doesn't really make that much sense. Allow me to sort of set up a primer as an example. Does the team that dominates the NBA have to have their team disbanded and then shipped off across the roster to balance things out for the rest of the season if they are dominating? Of course not. The onus is on the other teams to rise to the challenge, not to have the top performers dumbed down to match that of their worst performing opponents. Imagine if every sport was played at the tryout level, just so that everyone had a chance to win one of the games. Competitive sport wouldn't be the slightest bit engaging to watch. In fact, sport wouldn't even be aired on most TVs. Even if the match in question, or any sort of matchup in question, ends up being a slaughter, we have an opportunity to witness next level skill be put on display from a team that knows how to communicate and work together towards an end goal. This is why high level, highly skilled groups of players in Planetside are good to have. They set the bar are. They keep pushing the rest of the community, and we keep growing skill-wise in tow as a community. If we didn't have players out there pushing these limits, we would still be sitting on the hillside of the crown, spraying our assault rifles at tanks because we feel like we're doing something. While that spectacle sticks around for a while and is fun to enjoy, I don't think I would still be playing the game today if that's what I was still doing. Now, of course, an argument I'm expecting to hear, and a fair one at that, I must say, is that, well, Cammy, if this top-tier NBA team showed up to a basketball court where a bunch of kindergarten kids were playing, is that still really a fair competition that's worth engaging in? And it's actually a fair question to ask, because in the Planetside world, you could, realistically, have an outfit like Recursion come up against a really brand new, low-skill outfit, and, well, it would be a slaughterhouse. And no, in that particular situation, it's not a fair fight, and at the end of the day, those new players are going to get absolutely shit-mixed. But I think there's a difference here in intent. You see, in that situation we drew up earlier, the NBA team knows it's going to a kindergarten basketball game to just shit on people because it feels like doing that. High-skill players in Planetside, they don't know what kind of opposition they're going to face. Maybe they will come across another outfit of relatively equal skill, or maybe they will come across a Zerg fit, or maybe they will come across a lower skill population. You just don't know. There's no metrics on the Planetside 2 map that tell you who is involved in the fight and what their skill levels are. So I don't think there's any malicious intent in what these high skill players are doing, nor is there any malicious outcome to what these high skill players are doing. There is equal chance for them to come across either high skill or low skill opponents. That there is just the nature of Planetside and the nature of the skill curve that exists in Planetside 2. Sometimes you are going to come across players of infinitesimally higher skill than you are, and well, it's up to you to decide whether or not you take that on board as a learning experience, or whether you decide to throw a accusation the way of your opponent. If you want to get better at the game, I would suggest taking a more critical look at your gameplay and your opponent's gameplay and see what the missing links are. And if you choose to continue to be a casual player, that's fine. Just don't expect to win every engagement you come across, because there are people out there who take this game a little bit more seriously. And I hate to break it to you, but they deserve to win. That is what a healthy skill curve in a game looks like. And with all that said, guys, that is going to wrap up today's video discussing skill curves and the importance of them in first-person shooter gaming. If you happen to enjoy today's video, please feel free to backhand the like button, and if you didn't, well, feel free to backhand that dislike button as well, guys. Every little bit of engagement goes a long way to help, so I don't really mind either way. Leave a comment down below, let me know what you think of the video and what your thoughts are on today's topic. It was a very interesting one for me, something I don't normally cover, so definitely a bit more fun to have a bit of a critical think about stuff like this. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit the subscribe button as well if you're brand new, and also, if you want to support the channel further, consider becoming a member using the join button down below as well, gang. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, peace out, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Take care, guys. Have a good one.